Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. So today's video is going to be my March updated makeup review. So it's the 25th of May when I'm filming this. So all of the products that I'm going to be giving updated reviews on, whether from my Testing Pot Beauty video, my March's 12 Days of First Impressions, or my Testing New Revolution Beauty products. So all of those products I'm going to go into some more detail about what my thoughts are on them after using them for about 2 months now. So let's get started. I tried 2 primers in total. So I've got the Revolution Glass Liquid Skin Illuminating Skin Primer. I think one of these is spilt because I'm feeling some stickiness on my hands. And then also I tried the Flower Beauty Supernova Celestial Skin Elixir. So I'd say I've probably used the Revolution one more just because I like it a bit more. This primer just gives you like a little bit of subtle illumination and dewiness under foundation. Does it do anything mind-blowing or revolutionary? No, but it's nice. I do like primers that add a bit of dew and illumination. Do you prefer the ones that have more of a sort of kind of like liquid highlighty sort of effect as opposed to just kind of like moisture, if you get what I mean? This one I feel like is more of like a moisture sort of thing, but I like that it's subtle and it doesn't like turn you into an oil slick. That's nice. I have a real problem when primers turn you into an oil slick, which leads us on to the other primer, the Flower Beauty Supernova Celestial Skin Elixir. So I brought this because it had good reviews, and like when you look at the packaging, it looks like it is going to be like super like illuminating, highlighty, that sort of thing. This just turns you into complete oil slick. It's literally like putting olive oil on your skin, basically. You could be frying some food on your face with the amount of oil that produces. It's just way too much for me. This is like a subtle, nice amount of shine and dew. This is just too much. I've tried like putting less on. The best I've gotten it to look is if I kind of do about 3 drops all over and then kind of pat it in with a sponge afterwards. I do find that helps a bit to make it slightly less shiny, but either way I still just think it's a bit too much for me, and it doesn't really have like that super like highlighty effect. It is more just like an oil or dew to the skin. So I'm not in love with either of these primers. In fact, I'd say I don't really like this one at all. This one I like, but it's nothing special to me, really. I would recommend it if you use like a subtle amount of dew under foundation. I think it does that well, but it's not super illuminating. Okay, so moving on to foundations, I tried 3 in total throughout March. I've got the Pot Beauty Filter Effect Base. This is in the shade number 1. This foundation doesn't have a very good shade range, but surprisingly this is actually a bit too pale for me. Actually all of these foundations are a bit too pale for me, which is odd. This doesn't normally happen. So the second one I've got is the L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Matte Cover Foundation. This is in 90 Rose Porcelain. Again, a little bit too pale for me. And the last one I tried is the Makeup Obsession Quick Stick Base Conceal and Contour. It's in the shade L03. Obviously it's like 3 shades down, yet it still manages to be too light for me. So I think that goes to show how shade ranges in terms of paleness have definitely progressed somewhere. So I did film wear tests for all of these. I think that the powders that I used in my wear tests kind of interfered with it. So I then sort of just did another wear test, but I didn't film it with a powder I liked. I used the Laura Mercier one and found that I did get better results, but I'll talk about the wear in a sec. So I'll start by talking about the L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Matte Cover. So I was really excited to try this because I love the Infallible Fresh Wear Foundation. That is one of, if not my all-time favourite foundation. So when I saw they were coming out with a matte one, I thought that sounded great because I personally quite like matte foundations. When it comes to foundations, my preference is either matte or semi-matte. I don't like super oily, dewy foundations, just because I feel like they sit in my pores and they just kind of emphasise my pores, and I don't know. I like makeup that blurs pores and minimises pores. This foundation definitely does succeed in being matte, but perhaps a little bit too matte. I do just feel like, it's hard to explain, but when I put it on I feel like there's almost like a bit of fuzziness to it, like it clings a bit weirdly to certain areas on my face. I think it has got really good coverage. The coverage I really like. I'd describe it as a high, medium, low fold coverage, which is my personal preference, so the coverage is great. And it's a type of foundation that it does look better some days than others. I think if you had like a more hydrating primer under it, it will look nicer. I do feel like the times I've used it with primer, it looks better, but again I still just feel like it is a little bit too dry, and I just find that it has this sort of like fuzzy kind of look. It doesn't look completely like smooth everywhere, which was a little bit disappointing because I was hoping that I was really going to like this. And I will insert the wear test that I did, and I don't think it held up particularly well in that wear test, but then when I redid it with the Laura Mercier powder, I felt like it held up way better. I still don't think it's like the most long wearing foundation. I think the Infallible Fresh Wear does have better wear than this one. When I did it with the Laura Mercier, I did find there was a little bit of issues on my forehead and a little bit of breakage on the chin, so it wasn't perfect at the end of the day, but I do feel like it overall held up better than the powders I used in my wear test, but I'm going to include that wear test anyway. Okay, so I have had the L'Oreal Infallible matte foundation on for, it's been about 9 hours now. I like to do like 8 to 9 hours for my wear test. I have had these glasses on, so obviously we've had some of this business. See, I don't feel like the glasses have touched my forehead, because I'm just thinking, like, when I put them on, they sit like that, and if I push them up a bit, it would touch it a bit, but not, because there is definitely some not so good stuff going on kind of right here. It's sort of broken down a bit, and my forehead looks kind of oily, which is weird because I don't really have oily skin, and this is a matte foundation, but I feel like my skin looks kind of greasy and oily, which is bizarre, especially because I have literally just been sitting at home all day and not sweating at all. In fact, my house is freezing cold because our heating isn't working. It's definitely settled into these smile lines, and it's really not looking so good in the chin, and I have tried my best not to touch my face today, because normally in everyday life, especially if I'm at home, which I have been every freaking day for like over a month now, I do touch my face, but I've tried to avoid it as much as possible, and it's really just not looking particularly great on my chin. I mean, it did settle in this line at the start of the day, but then, like, it's fine. I don't mind if it's like kind of gone my little chin line a bit, but it's the fact that the product's kind of gone all separated and grim looking now, if you can sort of see. Yeah, I have to be honest, I'm not super impressed with how this is worn. I don't think it looks absolutely awful. These outer parts of my face here look fine. And I feel like parts of my forehead are okay, but then like the closer you get in, it's just kind of just breaking down. It's just a bit, and it's really oily looking for some reason. It has settled into these little smile lines here and sort of broken down around there. I'm not really that impressed with wear, and I definitely think the Infallible Fresh Wear has way better wear than this foundation personally. I just think overall I was a little bit underwhelmed with this foundation. I don't think it's awful. I've had worse wearing foundations than this, but it's not great, to be honest. So overall, I don't dislike this foundation. I think there are good aspects to it, and it's not the sort of thing where, like, the kind of issues that I pointed out, where it's looking a bit sort of fuzzy, not the smoothest. It's the sort of thing where you only really notice it if you're like properly up close to the face, but I just feel like overall I was expecting a bit more from this, and I don't dislike it, but I was just hoping that I'd like it more than I did. So I'll talk about the Pop Beauty one. I actually have this one on my face today. I would say that this one is more on the dewy side. It's not completely overkill dewy, but it's definitely more dewy than it is matte. I personally would have preferred it to be a bit more semi-matte than it is, but at the same time it's not so overkill where I can't stand it on my face. And that's the thing, like, I've obviously set it with powder today, and I actually think my skin doesn't look too bad today, so I think if you use like good powders with it, it's fine. I would say that this is the most light coverage out of all of these. I personally would prefer it to have a bit more coverage, but then I guess if I want something a bit more lightweight, it's an option. I think the finish of it isn't too bad. Like, I feel like it's a lot smoother than the L'Oreal one. I don't feel like it clings weirdly in any areas. I don't feel like it goes patchy. Like, it applies pretty nicely. My issue is I just prefer it to have a bit more coverage and be a slightly less dewy, and then I feel like I'd like it a lot. And I do feel like out of these three foundations, this one did hold up the best actually. I feel like this one wore the best, but it wasn't perfect. Obviously I will put in my wear test, and I did mention that I thought this wore the best, but it still didn't look fantastic at the end of the day. And I did feel like when I did it with the Laura Mercier powder, I feel like they all held up pretty similarly, but this one just wore maybe slightly better, just a tiny little bit less breakage. Okay, so Pop Beauty Filter Effect Base. It's currently 6 AM in the morning. I put this on just before 8 PM, so it's been on my face too long. It's the point. I feel like of all of them, this one's probably held up the best. When I look at I feel like the forehead wear is probably the best of this. I mean, it doesn't look perfect, I do feel like this bit here where it's sort of broken down, I think that is where my glasses have sat. But if you kind of go up a little bit from there, just ignoring that bit, that's probably the best in terms of like center of the forehead, where it has like settled into those little lines that I have just a little bit. But I feel like that's the best forehead out of the three. I mean, it still doesn't look perfect. You can kind of see that it is sort of starting to break down a bit and separate. The chin, it doesn't look good like in the line bit, but like the bottom part of the chin looks fine, but the actual line bit has gone very, I don't know what it is, it just looks pretty bad, whatever it is. I feel like if I ignored like that line though, the rest of the chin's actually fine. These outer parts of my face are fine. I think this one holds up not too bad. I think of the foundations, I feel like this one definitely wears the best out of the three, but I still don't think it wears great, but it's just sort of average. So this is just a sort of foundation where I feel a bit meh about it. Like I don't dislike it. I think if you want a foundation that's kind of like a light to medium coverage, that's more dewy but not overkill dewy, and wears reasonably well, then yeah. So next we've got the Makeup Obsession Quick Stick. So this one I definitely say is more semi-matte. I do find that this one is a little bit difficult to blend. It is a sort of thing where it kind of drags on your skin. It's not the best to blend it. Even with a wet sponge I still had difficulties blending it. I do feel like it could blend out more seamlessly. I would say the coverage is like a kind of solid medium coverage, but with building I feel like one layer is more like highlight coverage, but it is buildable. I don't know, like I don't think this has like the most flawless pore blurring sort of finish. I just feel like it looks kind of average on the skin. It wore pretty similar to the L'Oreal one. I did think it wore like a tiny bit better in the wear test that I filmed. However, when I switched powders, I feel like they wore basically the same, to be honest. So again, it's just sort of like an average wearing foundation. It doesn't wear super bad, it doesn't wear super great. Okay, so Makeup Obsession Quick Stick. I kept this on a little bit longer than I wanted to. It's been about 10 hours. I normally like to go between 8 and 9, but it is currently 5:30 in the morning. I applied this at about 7:30 in the evening. Don't even ask, my life is a mess. I haven't had the glasses on all day, but I have had them on for the last like 5 hours, I want to say. So obviously same thing, and again I just don't feel like this is worn very well, and it's making me think maybe the powder, the concealer that I'm using is perhaps not helping. Again, there's quite a bit of breakage and not so good stuff going on in the chin. I feel like this just looks very similar to how the L'Oreal one looked yesterday. If anything though, I feel like this one is slightly better than the L'Oreal one, just because I feel like even though it has started to separate my forehead and we've got the same sort of kind of shine, I don't feel like it's broken down as badly on the forehead. Like I can kind of sort of see it starting to break down. I don't feel like it's broken down too much. It's just right again between my brows where I can kind of start to see it where I can see it start to separate a bit. Hopefully you can see what I mean, and there's just some sort of like kind of little bits of sinkage. Overall I just feel like these three foundations are very average. I've not found anything super great. To be honest. A little bit underwhelmed with the foundations that I chose for March, but you know, that's all I've got to say about the foundations. So let's move on to concealers. I tried 3 concealers. They're all actually Revolution Beauty products. So I've got the Revolution Conceal and Fix Ultimate Coverage Concealer, which is the one that comes in a pot, and it's in the shade Light Yellow. I've got two shades of the Revolution Conceal and Define Infinite Long Wear Concealer. I've got 0.3 and 0.2 in those. And then I also tried the I Heart Revolution Heartbreaker Concealer, which is in the shade Oat. This one has a lot of vitamin extracts in it from the description. I'll talk about the Infinite ones first. I feel like I probably used these the most. These definitely have really good coverage. I would say that they are pretty full coverage. I feel like I have found a few concealers that have like a tiny bit more coverage, like Tarte Shape Tape, Elf Camo, but there's barely anything in it. It's just like little minor things that I can notice. It's a full coverage concealer, definitely. I like that. I do just find that they are a bit too dry. I know people say like the Elf and the Tarte are dry. I personally don't think that they're dry enough for it to look bad on my skin, whereas with these I feel like if I'm using it over the top of foundation, it's not too bad. However, if I'm using them on like bare skin, which I have done a couple times, I don't like how it looks. It's just way too dry on the skin, and it just goes a bit like flaky, crusty sort of looking. Over the top of foundation, depending on how matte or how dewy your foundation is, like I do feel like when I used it with the L'Oreal one, it could still look quite dry when I used them. Literally, that's just my kind of complaint with them, is that they are a bit too dry. The coverage is great, but it's just, that's the issue I have. When it comes to concealer fix, I feel like I have the opposite problem, but then it has the same strength in that it has got really good coverage. This is also a full coverage concealer, like I was really impressed with the coverage. However, it's just so greasy and so oily. It's like, these are just like opposite ends of the spectrum here, but then they both have full coverage. What we want is something in the middle. This I just find too oily, and also, it also is quite creasy. I find a few times when I use it to do like cut creases with eyeshadow that, I mean, I would just be using like regular powder eyeshadows. I wouldn't be using like glitters or anything, because glitters do tend to crack on me. But even with just regular eyeshadow, I did find that like it would separate and like crack when I used this for like a cut crease. So it's just something quite creasy, something a bit creasy and cracky about the formula of this one. It works okay as like an eyeshadow base if you set it with powder afterwards, but if you're using it like wet, it's not going to work well with eyeshadow, but if you set it, it's fine. Coverage great, but again, just like the finish of it, it's just too oily and too creasy and crepey, really. And it's the sort of thing where you can just kind of feel it on your skin, like it feels sort of sweaty, which sounds really gross and unpleasant, but that's just how it is. But I have got to say, it has got really good coverage. I did actually use it today around like my blemishes around my mouth, and like honestly, it is really impressive how it just covers them, because a lot of concealers, like I'll just put them around my mouth to cover like my blemishes and my blemish scars, and I won't notice much difference, but with this, like I actually did notice a difference. It's a shame that it's just so oily and creasy. If it wasn't, then I would really rate that. That's why I quite like the NARS one that comes in a pot like this, because it's got really good coverage, but it's got a more sort of like matte, sort of velvety kind of formula, and it doesn't have that same oil problem. And the I Heart Revolution one, this is definitely more of a hydrating concealer. I remember using it all over as a base, because I do like to test concealers out in that way too, and I do feel like it just looked a little bit too dewy for what I liked. I do feel like it just kind of emphasised my pores using it as a base. It's definitely not dry at all. It's pretty hydrating, and I wouldn't say it's like as oily and greasy as this one. This one's definitely a lot thinner of a formula. The other Revolution ones are quite thick. This is definitely very thin. It has decent coverage. I'd say it's just like a solid medium coverage concealer, but I personally, I'm all about full coverage concealers. That's what I'm into, and this just doesn't quite reach that category. It's just a medium coverage concealer. The shade is Oat. It's quite pale, but I think the undertone doesn't suit me very well. I feel like it's a little bit too pink, and I like to match my neck, which is more warm toned. If you're into like a medium coverage concealer that's quite hydrating, then yeah, I'd recommend this, but it's just not my personal preference for me, so I don't think it's bad for what it is. It doesn't claim to be full coverage, and on the packaging it literally lists all of the vitamins that are in it, so I feel like this is more of a like skincare oriented concealer. I think it's meant to be a lightweight sort of thing, so yeah, I can see other people liking it, but I just don't think it suits my preferences. Overall, I was a little bit like disappointed with the concealers. I feel like out of these, the Infinite ones are my favourite. I feel like I can use those, not with a super matte foundation and not on bare skin, but if I've got just like a kind of semi-matte foundation, then they work absolutely fine, and they do add the coverage that I like. Okay, so moving on to powders, I've actually got 4 powders in total that I tried. So I've got the Maybelline Superstay Full Coverage Powder, which is in 102 Fair Porcelain. So this isn't in UK drugstores, so like Superdrug or Boots, but you can get this on Amazon. I think it was like about £12 maybe, so it's obviously a bit more expensive than it would be if it was just in drugstores, but I just wanted to try it, so I spent it. I'll put links to them below. Also from Prop Beauty, I tried their face magnet powder. It's in Zero No Show, which is just the translucent white shade. I've hit pan on all of these powders, but that doesn't surprise me because I always hit pan on powders pretty fast, because I just need to use a lot of them. Like, I need to be mattified. I can't stand it when there's just like moisture or oil on my face. It's got to be set. Then I also tried the Revolution Concealer and Define Satin Matte Powder Foundation with hyaluronic acid and cannabis sativa. That is a mouthful. So this isn't on the Revolution Beauty website, but it is in Superdrug, so I'm not sure if it's a Superdrug exclusive or what, but I did check recently in the Revolution website and I still couldn't see it there, so I'm not sure if this is just a UK thing, or again, hit the pan on it. This is the one I've got on today. And then the last powder was the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder in 05 fair. Again, you can't get this one in Superdrug or Boots in the UK, but you can get it off of Amazon. It was a little bit pricey. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. I'm going to talk about the Revolution Concealer and Define one just because this is the one that I've got on today. I have to say that this powder is very good when it comes to like blurring out pores, just giving you that sort of like airbrushed look. Like when I look at my skin, it looks airbrushed, it looks flawless, and that is what I look for in powders. I feel like it doesn't separate my under eye makeup, which is a problem that does arise sometimes with my skin. I don't feel like it does. It looks a little bit heavy under the eyes, but it doesn't like break down my makeup. It's just like right in the lines. It's like the product sort of breaks down when I put powder over it. It happens with a lot of powders and it's a real problem that I have, but I don't feel like this one does it, which is great because I do feel like pressed powders tend to do it more often than loose powders. So pressed powders is something that I struggle with now. Yeah, the finish is nice, but the only sort of issue I have with this is that it's quite heavy. See, I don't mind today because I use the Pot Beauty foundation, and as I said, that is more light coverage, but it's the sort of thing where if I had on like a high medium or a full coverage foundation, I probably would find it a bit too much. So I definitely would recommend using this with a lighter coverage or a medium coverage foundation as opposed to something a bit more bam with the coverage, because otherwise it probably will look a bit cakey in the skin. But personally, I actually think the finish of it is super nice. The shade works well for pale skin. Actually, I do feel like maybe it's a tiny bit light for me. Yeah, the shade works great. The finish is like flawless, really. The only issue is it's a little bit heavy. I could see like some people not liking it and thinking it is too heavy. I think that just depends on your personal preferences. I feel like it interacts with base products well. There's no weird separation or patchiness or anything. It also lasts pretty well. I have noticed the last 2 times, including today when I used it, I felt like my bronzer didn't show up as well on it, but my highlighter showed up absolutely fine, and so did the blush. But for some reason I feel like, I don't know if it's the particular bronzer I'm using, because I use the same one each time, but I feel like my bronzer doesn't show up as well with this, which is odd because I feel like that normally only happens with like translucent powders. It never normally happens with powders that have a colour tint to them, so I think it might just be that specific bronzer that it doesn't like. Overall, I actually do think this is a good product, and I definitely think it's the best Revolution powder I've tried, because I've never really fallen in love with a Revolution powder before, although I have got a few more on my wish list that I want to buy. I like it, but if you are into more natural makeup, you probably wouldn't like it, but if you're all about like a cake face like me, then go for it. So the Pot Beauty one, I think this is an okay powder. It's fine. Again, I don't feel like it separates under my eyes, which is great. I don't feel like it has the most like flawless pore blurring finish like the Revolution one does. I feel like this one just looks average on the face. Like it sets everything down, controls your oils, does that, doesn't look patchy, but it just doesn't have that super pore blurring flawless finish that I look for from powder. So to me, like, this is good because it doesn't do anything bad, but then I just kind of wish it did a bit more. That's my issue with it. But I feel like because it is a translucent powder, that probably is to be expected, and it doesn't have like coverage like the powder foundation obviously adds coverage. So I feel like for what it is, it does a fine job. There's not much I have to complain about. The fact that it doesn't separate under my eyes is great because that's a problem I have. So honestly, it's a good powder and I'd probably use it up. I also don't feel like it gives you a white cast. I do find like some translucent powders like this can just make you look like a ghost. I don't feel like it does this. So overall, I think this is actually like not bad. It's pretty decent. I just wish it had a bit more of a pore blur and flawless finish. That's all I can say, but I do feel like it's actually not that bad. It's also definitely way more lightweight than the Revolution one as well. The Maybelline Superstay Full Coverage Powder. This is described as a powder foundation. I feel like it does add a bit of coverage, but it's definitely way more lightweight than the Revolution one. In that sense, I like it because it does add a bit of coverage, but without being too heavy. And again, it doesn't separate under my eyes, which is fantastic. See, I like everything about this powder, except this was the powder that I used to film my foundation wear test, and I do just feel like it doesn't I don't feel like the oil control or like the breakage control is great with this powder. I don't feel like it holds up for a long time. I think that's the issue I have with this powder. Everything else about it I like. Again, I feel like the shade looks like it's going to be a bit too dark when you get it, but it works super well. Like, if anything, it's too pale. In fact, I'd rather it be like a tiny bit darker, to be honest. Again, when it comes to like either powder foundations or powders that have a like skin colour to them. I do find generally it is hard to find ones that work for pale skin, and the fact that I found 2 pressed ones that do work for pale skin is, you know, pretty good in itself. Yeah, I think this has a nice finish. It sets everything down. It doesn't look heavy, it doesn't look cakey, it doesn't separate, doesn't go patchy. It does everything fine. I just don't think it holds up over time. It's just, I feel like the oil control aspect of it could be a lot better, and that's the only complaint I have about it. Otherwise, I think it's nice. I would continue to use it on days where like I'm not really that fussed if my makeup lasts that long. It's not the sort of thing I would use for an occasion where I want my makeup to last a really long time. Last one is the only loose powder that we tried. So this is the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder. Now this, the interesting thing about this is that when you kind of like get it out and look at the colour, it looks like it's going to be like kind of orangey and too dark. But then as soon as you put it on your face, it's like super pale. It's like, if anything, a bit too pale. I can't really use it all over the face because of how light it is, but I can use it under the eyes to brighten, and I actually do quite like it. Again, I do feel like it has that sort of pore blurring effect. Not had any issues with it separating. I have had a few occasions where I feel like it has gone a bit patchy, so like where I kind of like transition 2 powders into each other, because obviously I use this one mostly just under the eyes. Sometimes I will get a weird gap, but I think that might be something to do with the way I'm applying it maybe, and it doesn't happen all the time, only occasionally. But actually I do really like the effect of it under the eyes. It's not lightweight looking, but it doesn't look super like heavy either. I think it is a good like brightening powder for pale skin to use under the eyes, but personally for me it's a little bit too light to use all over the face, but that's okay because I've got other things I can use for the outer parts of my face. But I like it as an under eye brightening powder. It can be quite difficult to find loose powders to like apply under the eyes that aren't just straight up white, so it is like nice to have an option that has a tint to it but is still pale enough and will still give you that brightened effect. So I think that's great. This was recommended to me in my comments, so thank you to the people that told me. I do overall think it's a good powder, and if you've got pale skin I definitely would recommend getting this and using it as like an under eye brightening powder. Obviously if your skin's a bit lighter than me, you probably could use it all over. So overall I feel like all of those powders had good aspects to them. I don't feel like the powders was a complete dud. I feel like all of those had good aspects to them. I actually think the Revolution one and probably the Maybelline Loose one are my favourites. Okay, so moving on to cheek products. So there were 2 bronzing products that I tried. So I've got the Pop Beauty Pow Wow Powder Bronzer in Beach In Bronze, which is a quad that comes with 4 bronzer shades and 1 sort of blush shade. They're all a very shimmery sort of formula. I tend to use this one the most. I feel like these 2, well this one here is really like cool toned, but then it's like shimmery, so you couldn't really contour with it because, I mean, I personally wouldn't want to contour with a shimmery bronzer. So I do feel like I only really have reached for this one here, and I have also used the blush, so I feel like half of the palette has been a bit useless to me. I think it's actually not bad. I think it works well. I have used it on my cheeks today, but as I mentioned earlier, I do feel like that powder foundation doesn't agree with this bronzer for some reason. It's not too pigmented, it's quite subtle, so I do think it works, and that particular shade, I feel like it does work for pale skin. It's not the best shade I've ever found for pale skin, and I found a lot of really good bronzers for pale skin, but I do feel like it works. It doesn't look off or anything. And I think the blush is pretty nice as well, so I do think that it is like decent quality, but I just don't really see it becoming like a go-to for me. I don't think it's bad, but I wouldn't like recommend running out and getting it. I think the formula is fine, but again, and I do feel like I do prefer bronzers that aren't like super like glittery and shimmery like this. Like I don't mind if they have a little bit of shimmer in them, but I feel like ones that are kind of overly glittery and shimmery, I'm not the biggest fan of. I generally do prefer matte bronzers or like subtle shimmery bronzers. Thoughts on this are meh. Packaging's kind of cute though. I like the little comic book style. I do think it was quite expensive for what it is as well, so. Then I've also got the Revolution Pro NAF bronzer in the shade Architeco. I wasn't really sure what to expect when it came to the shade, but this is definitely a super cool toned one. So I thought maybe I'll use it for contour instead, because I don't really like to bronze with cool toned shades. I have tried it to bronze with, and I just don't really like it. I can get away with it. Like, I wouldn't be embarrassed to leave with it on as a bronzer or anything, but I just don't feel like it's the ideal shade for my skin tone personally. And I do feel like for contour it's just a little bit too deep. I would prefer something like a tiny bit paler than this, really. And in terms of the formula, I feel like the formula could be better, to be fair. I feel like it's a little bit too pigmented, and it and you can, sometimes you can get it to blend out quite nice, but other times you do struggle with it. I think it's just the sort of thing where you have to be very, very careful with how you place it. And I have a lot of bronzers where I don't have to worry about that too much, so it's just, I'm a bit, I don't really like this, to be honest. I feel like a certain skin tone maybe would get along with this. If you had more like medium skin, maybe you'd like this as a contour shade, or if you prefer a more cool toned bronze. Even if you are the correct skin tone for this, I still feel like the formula isn't the best, and there probably are better formulas out there. It could be more blendable, and I feel like, personally for me, I prefer more subtle bronzers anyway that are like more buildable as opposed to just blah pigment. See, that Pot Beauty bronzer palette had a blush in, and as I said, I did quite like it, but there wasn't anything special. But I also had another one of the Pro NAF products from Revolution Pro, and this is the blush in Mia Kiss. And in my first impressions, I remember putting it on and it just being way too much. I have got it on today, and I did definitely get a more subtle application for this. The best way to apply it is to get like a really kind of fluffy like brush that isn't dense at all. If you're going to use it with a really compact brush, you're going to have problems. You need something like quite fluffy. And applied the way that I've done it today, I think it works absolutely fine. It is a nice colour. I like it, but again, I just have blushes that I prefer personally. So yeah, I don't dislike it, but I just feel like there are better formulas when it comes to cheap products out there. I prefer matte bronzers, but I do feel like with blushes, I actually kind of like blushes that have a bit of glow in them. So for highlighter, there was only one highlighter that I tried, and that is the Revolution Glass Crystal Illuminator. I'm not sure what the shade name is, but it's the kind of icy white one. It doesn't actually matter though, because you can't buy this product because it has been discontinued. Basically, for anyone that doesn't know, Manny MUA's brand, Luna Beauty, they had a highlighter, and he basically came up with packaging that's almost identical to this, and Revolution basically stole the mould of it. I don't know whether they knowingly did it or what. Honestly, I'm a bit, I've not really looked up this too much, but either way, Revolution were definitely in the wrong with this. They shouldn't have stolen that packaging. Revolution obviously are a dupes brand, but I feel like they didn't really need to copy the packaging like to a T like that. They could have just done like a diamond or an octagon just without all the indentations in it, you know. They could have done something similar without stealing the actual mould. I still like Revolution as a brand. They apologised, they took down the product. What else are they supposed to do? I can understand if you would have an issue with Revolution after that, but I feel like I can't have an issue with Revolution because like 70% of my makeup collection is Revolution, and I don't want to get rid of that stuff. I mean, they apologised, it's done. The product's been discontinued, but obviously I didn't know about any of this stuff when I bought this product because I wasn't really that familiar with Luna Beauty anyway, so I just thought, oh, pretty highlighter, I'll buy it. The first thing that came to my head when I bought it actually was like the Fenty Beauty Diamond Bomb, because I feel like they were going for a similar sort of formula to that, because it's like a very sort of glittery highlighter, and the Diamond Bomb is quite like that, but I actually think I prefer this to the Diamond Bomb. I have a whole lot of issues with the Diamond Bomb, but we won't get into that because this video is not about the Diamond Bomb. So initially I did kind of feel like, obviously it was pigmented, stunning and everything, but I just felt like it didn't really like mesh into the skin super nicely. However, I definitely found like the more that I used it, I could get it to mesh to the skin. What I would do is just like blend it in with a sponge, and I think I switched sponges from when I first used it, and I think that helped. See, because I've got it on today and I just feel like it looks way more natural now. It's just all about how you apply it really. So I actually do think it's a really nice highlighter overall, and I do prefer it to the Diamond Bomb. The shade's obviously like pretty pale, but I'm pale so it works for me. Definitely not like an all-time favourite, but I do think it is a pretty highlighter and it's really nice. But I don't know, I think I just prefer, like, I don't mind glitter and highlights, like I'm not against that at all, but I feel like it's like a very glittery highlight, if you get what I mean. Okay, so moving on to eyebrows. So I tried 2 brow products in total, and they were both gels from Revolution. So I got the Revolution Brow, I'm pretty sure this is just called the Revolution Brow Gel, this one. It's in the shade Dark Brown, and then I've got the Revolution Brow Gel that has Cannabis Sativa in it. I'm not going to lie to you, these are basically the same product. One of them just smells a bit like weed, that's the only difference. They also are like the exact same product as the Revolution Brow Gel. I mean, I feel like they're all the same. I don't know why they had to release 3 gels just under their different umbrella brands or whatever. I just don't. Why are these products the same? I don't know. And I saw like Makeup Obsessions come out with a brow gel as well now, which the packaging looks pretty similar and the wand and everything, but then it's like a fluffy fibre one, so I am quite interested to try that one. But then if I get it and it's like the exact same as these, I'm going to be really annoyed. These are the exact same products, just as, yeah, one smells different, and I don't really like them. I've used them on my brows today. not really mad about how my brows have come out today, to be honest. They're just so pigmented, there's so much excess on them. I find the colours a bit too dark. I feel like the whole shade selection of these is a bit off because there's only like 3 colours, like light brown, medium brown, black. It's basically like 2 light brown shades and then like black. So there's just, they need more options with the colours definitely, because I do find these a little bit too dark, because even though I dye my hair black, I do prefer to match my like brow colour to my natural brow colour, which is more of like a ashy kind of mousy brown colour. I can get away with this colour, but I would just prefer it to be a bit lighter. These are just too pigmented for me. I'm not into like really pigmented brow gels. I just like subtle brow gels, like the Benefit Give Me Brow or the Elf Wow Brow, that sort of thing. That's what I'm into. These are just too much pigment for me, and it's just, I just found that like a lot of the times when I use them, I would just always end up making my brows too thick or splodgy, or the product would just be distributed weirdly, and then I'd blend it but it wouldn't blend the way I wanted it to. And yeah, I just find like these are a struggle to use. Like some days I could get a somewhat decent brow with them, but it's just the sort of thing where you're going to have different experience every time you use it. And in terms of like the hemp thing, I feel like the whole hemp thing in makeup is I feel like it's a bit gimmicky. Like I don't feel like, does it actually do anything? I don't feel like it's really going to do anything to improve your makeup if it's got like hemp in it. Like, is it? Probably not. Okay, so eyeliners. I tried, well, 1, technically 2, because it's the same eyeliner but in 2 different shades. So these are the Revlon Color Stay Micro Hyper Precision, I can't talk, Hyper Precision Gel Eyeliner. So I got the brown one and then I got the black one. Don't like these. I did try and use the black one just sort of on my lash line, but they're so difficult to apply. They're so dry and they snap so easily. The black one is just like not good in the waterline. You have to build it up so much, and even when you have built it up, it still looks faint. It's just not pigmented at all, and again, it's just prone to snapping. But even if these were like meant for the lash line more so than the waterline, which I think they were, I still don't think they're that good on the lash line either, because they take forever to apply. Again, they're so dry, they're so stiff, they snap every 5 seconds. I'm surprised I've not run out of them, the amount that they've snapped. I personally don't like these. I personally wouldn't recommend them. I feel like there are like better, there are definitely way better eyeliners out there than these. I think the whole appeal of them is that they're quite small, but again, I just don't feel like that helps at all. I just don't think it makes anything easier because they're so stiff and because they break so easily. Right, so mascaras, I tried 3 mascaras in total. So the one I've got on today is the Maybelline Falsies Lash Lift Mascara, which I think came out like a couple of months ago, so it's a relatively new mascara. And I've got the Revolution Big Lash XL Volume Mascara. Again, Revolution did come out with a load of new mascaras, like, again, a couple months ago, so sort of a new product. That's the thing, like, sometimes I'll buy new trending products, sometimes I'll just buy old shit that no one cares about. I just buy what I personally want. Then also I've got the Pop Beauty Lash Extension Mascara. I'll talk about the Maybelline one first, because this is the one that I've got on my lashes today. This one definitely grew on me a lot. I feel like this is the sort of mascara that it does improve, like the more it sort of dries out a bit. I just feel like you get a bit more thickness and volume once it dries out a bit. I do overall think this is actually a pretty good mascara. I think you can tell like it gives thickness, it gives volume. I feel like maybe it could be a tiny bit more lengthening, but I feel like I prefer thickness and volume to length anyway, but I personally like it when it's got all of that in there. I would say if you get this and you're not in love with it at first, do just let it dry out a little bit. I feel like I'm at the point now where it's kind of dried up a bit too much and it's kind of coming to an end. I overall think this is a pretty good mascara. It's not my absolute favourite mascara. I have found ones like a little bit more wow and impressive. I always mention the Collection Lash Surge. That is an incredible mascara for $4.99 and I prefer that to this. But I definitely think that this is a good drugstore mascara. I would recommend giving it a go if you're into like thick voluminous lashes, but again, I do think there are slightly better ones out there. Again, Collection, I know L'Oreal's got a lot of my favourite mascaras. The Revlon All-in-One mascara from last month's review, that's a really good one too. Overall, the Maybelline mascara is definitely a really good one. I'd recommend it, but I've been wowed by mascaras more, I'll just say that. The Pop Beauty one is pretty voluminous, but it's not quite as voluminous as the Maybelline one, but it definitely does something for your lashes. It's got some thickness, it's got some volume. Nothing insane. The issue I have with this, and I feel like I've put off using it a lot because of this, is that because it has fibres in it. Nothing against fibre mascaras, like the Wet n Wild fibre mascara kit, I absolutely love that one. I feel like fibre mascaras generally, I think are pretty good. I feel like generally they do give a lot of volume. The issue with this one for me is that I just feel like they always get in my eye. I just find like this really irritating on the eyes, like every time I use it. I just find it irritating and I just want to rub my eyes because it just feels like there's fibres in them. And I do feel like the fibres don't always blend in the most seamlessly. Like sometimes they'll just like be like sticking out at the edge and it just doesn't look very blended in. I've had like fibre mascaras that blend in a lot better than this. So yeah, I do think it actually does a good job in terms of the appearance that it gives to lashes. It's pretty thickening, pretty volumizing, a bit of length as well. But again, it's just like the fact that I find it really irritating and that the fibres don't blend in the best that puts me off using this. And I feel like if a mascara is going to irritate your eyes, like I feel like that's just crucial. If it's going to do that, you're not going to want to use it. So the Revolution Big Lash XL Volume Mascara, I don't really like this. I just don't feel like it gives volume. I would say it gives a little bit of length, I'll give it that, but it's just such a meh mascara. It's just not dramatic. I just want mascaras that are just going to give me everything dramatic. I just want it all. I want like false eyelash looking mascaras, you know, and I found them. I know they exist. This is just meh to me, and it's got such a massive wand, so it's just really annoying when you see this massive wand and, you know, you expect these massive lashes from it, and it's just so underwhelming. And now I'm really confused because Revolution's got quite a lot of mascaras now, and I have no idea which ones to buy. Because every time I look at reviews, I see mixed things. Like, it'll be mostly positive, and then I'll see like one thing saying that it's shit, and that's all I can focus on. I can't get that out of my head, so I have no idea like which mascaras I want to try from Revolution, if I even want to try any, because I have no idea if any of them are any good. Revolution mascara that they came out with like about a year ago, I did quite like that one, so I probably would rebuy that at some point. Yeah, this is a meh mascara. I wouldn't really recommend it. It's just I want more. I want more lashes than what this gives me. So out of those mascaras, the Maybelline one I definitely would recommend, but the other two, not so much. Okay, moving on to eyeshadow. We've got a lot to talk about here. I have the Revolution Patricia Bright Rich in Colour eyeshadow palette. I think I've broken the lid for this, I'm not gonna lie. Looks like this. I have used it a few times recently on my channel. I used it in my half high-end, half drugstore video. But I've also got the Pop Beauty Dusk Deluxe Light Shadow Palette, which is this little cutie here. That's what the shades look like. I did also try a Pop Beauty Flash Shadow Liquid eyeshadow. I'll talk about this first to get it out of the way. I used it a few times, but again, I feel like recently I've discovered I'm not really into liquid eyeshadows or glitters. Liquid eyeshadows or glitters really, just because they always crack on me. They always crack and separate on me, and it's really annoying because the initial effect of this is so pretty. It's such a nice colour, the pigment's great, it goes on fine, but it's just as soon as it dries down, you just see it settling and all those cracks, and like there'll be little gaps where it's separated, and it's just not nice. I did do a eyeshadow look with this, and I think it was a Patricia palette, so I'll put some pictures on screen. So like as you can see, it looks super pretty, but then as soon as you look closer and you see the cracks, it's just like, why? So I think for that reason I'm probably going to stop buying liquid eyeshadows and glitters and things like that. I think I'm just going to stay clear of them. And it will probably just depend on your eye shape. I'm sure there are some eye shapes where you won't have the same issue with cracking, but I've just got a lot of folds in my eyes. So I'll talk about the Patricia palette. Let's have a look at how many looks I did with it. I've got 9 eyeshadow looks in total that I took pictures of here, and there was a couple that I just did that I didn't get pictures of, like most of them were like kind of neutral looks. I used it in a getting ready with makeup in my rotation video about a month ago, and then obviously I used it in that half drugstore, half high-end. So I played around with this palette a lot more than I normally would, because obviously I've been at home, I've not been at work, so what else have I had to do other than play with eyeshadow? So I've played with this palette a lot more than I normally would have time to play with eyeshadow. And obviously I've got it on my eyes today as well. I've done this yellowy blue look, which didn't turn out too bad actually. So let's go to the start. So the first look that I've got pictures of, I didn't really like how this one turned out. Some of the pictures are okay, but I tried to do this sort of like sunset-y thing. I had some issues I think with the purple, but I think that was mostly my fault, I think. Although I do remember in my half drugs or half high-end video having problems with getting the purple and the pink to blend in that. So yeah, I do think maybe the purple and the pink aren't the best to blend together in this palette. I think the look's really nice. Like if it was just like, I feel like if I'd sorted out that outer third a bit more, like this would have actually been a really nice look. But it's just the fact that there's this kind of like weird blending in the outer third that kind of ruins it. But I feel like the actual colours, and as you can see from the pictures, the colours are like, they're pigmented, they're stunning. So the next one I've got is this blue look, which again, I think this turned out pretty nice. Pigmentation, great. Blending was pretty decent with that one. I tried to do a lot of colour specific looks with this palette. So next one I've got is this green look, and I think that this one turned out really nice. I actually really like how this one looks. Again, I do think this one looked a little bit better in person than it did in pictures, but I did get some alright pictures of this. But I'm a big fan of green. I like greens. I thought this turned out pretty good. Then I have this red glitter thing. This one went a bit wrong, and again, as I was talking about with the liquid eyeshadow, and I said, have the same problem with glitters. They just, the cracks, the cracks. This eyeshadow look was actually looking really nice before I put that red glitter down. The crease, and like I think I initially had a white on or something, it looked really good, and then the second I put the glitter down, it all just went to absolute shit. So the reds and the yellows in the crease worked really good and blended well together and were pigmented, but the red glitter, I mean, if you like glitters, like, it's fine. Like, it's obviously a pigmented glitter, the colour's really nice, but if you should be able to see from the pictures, it's just crack central. It's that saying, I don't think I should say the phrase crack central, to be honest. Then I tried this pink one. I really like this. The matte pinks are definitely very pigmented. I really like the matte pinks and the shimmers as well. The shimmery pink's really nice. The white shimmering shade I used a lot. I actually have hit pan on that shade because I used it in so many of the looks. The white shimmer works really well. I have hit pan on that shade because I used it in almost all of the looks. Do love me a good either matte or shimmery whites. The shimmery shade Love Song that I used in that was a really nice shimmer. Then I did a purple look. I really just tried to do the whole rainbow here. Again, really nice. I feel like the matte purples that I used for the crease here did blend with each other well. So obviously, I do think with the mattes, some of them don't blend with other matte shades particularly well, but then some of them do. It's not a completely consistent thing. I think it depends on what like colour scheme you're going for, but I feel like those purples blended with each other well. So the shade Reckless that I used in that, like, it looks nice, but I don't feel like it is like the most like eye-capturing pigmented shimmery shade. Like, it's pretty good, but I feel like it's nothing magical. And then there was my first attempt at a rainbow eyeshadow. So after this, I should be uploading a video where I recreated a makeup tutorial from Make Me Up Missa, where she used this specific palette, the Patricia Bright one, and did a rainbow look, because I've been having a whole thing with rainbow looks recently where I'm just getting upset because I can't do them well. So this was my first attempt at a rainbow look, and I feel like in some angles it looks okay, but in a lot of angles it really doesn't look okay. It's just, I don't feel like I've adapted it to my eye shape very well. I think something that I need to learn is that I need to adapt eyeshadow to my eye shape. I shouldn't like be blowing things out as much because it doesn't suit my eye shape as much. Like, I feel like, for example, today I tend to go for this sort of shape a lot where I go out too much and I try to keep like a sharp edge at the end, but I think that suits my eyes the most. But as you can also see from the rainbow look, the matte shades are so pigmented, and I do feel like the majority of them blend well with each other. Obviously, when I used that liquid eyeshadow, I did also use this Patricia palette, just with the matte shades. And again, the neutral matte shades in this, like Queen, Model, and Allspice, they're really nice. They're really good. They are really nice neutral matte shades that blend really well with each other. I really like the nude. I really like the nude side of the palette. Recently, I tried to do a sort of sunset-y thing with yellows. Again, I don't feel like I got the best pick. I'm not sure if my pictures really like. I feel like the yellow that I used in the outer third, it looks a bit like it doesn't look like it's been blended in properly. I feel like this one looked better in person than it did in the pictures. I think overall it's a pretty eyeshadow look though. I did get a few pictures from the Make Me Up Missa tutorial video that I filmed, and as I was saying, I just don't think that sort of eyeshadow suits my eye shape. I also don't think I applied it the best either. I think a lot of that's down to just me. What's important is that the shades are vibrant and pigmented. So in my half Drugstore Half A end, I said that this was a dupe for the Be Perfect one, and I do think it is like a pretty close dupe. It's not exactly the same in terms of quality, but it's pretty close. I'm not in love with every single shade in this palette, but I do feel like overall I like more shades than I dislike. I do feel like it's quite a matte heavy palette. I don't love all of the shimmers in here. Some of the shimmers I feel like could be more pigmented, and then some of them have got this sort of like moussey kind of formula. So the shade Honey Pot and No Exit, you've got like a sort of mossy one and then a kind of goldy one. Not sure how I feel about that sort of formula, because sometimes I do feel like it applies a bit weirdly, because it's literally like a sort of cream more than it is an eyeshadow. Overall, I feel like this is a good eyeshadow palette. It's not completely consistent, but from all of the eyeshadow looks that I did, I feel like I really did get some good ones. I think this is a really good palette, and I'm glad I have it in my collection, but it's not 100% perfect. I think a lot of it just depends on how talented you are at eyeshadow. I vary in talent. Sometimes I'm like relatively competent, but most of the time I'm like completely chaotic. If you're into the colour scheme, I'd give it a go. Okay, so next, the Pop Beauty palette. Obviously this is a lot smaller. It's also incredibly shimmer heavy. So I did get a few eyeshadow looks with this, but not as many as I did with the Patricia one. Okay, so the first look that I've got here, I used the blue glitter in this. Put it all over like the main base of the eyeshadow. So obviously I used this glitter up here. It's got 3 glitters in it, and obviously at the time I thought I was into that, but as I've said, I've kind of just gone off it because it always just cracks. And in this picture you can definitely see it cracking. If it didn't crack, I think this would look really nice, but it's just the fact that it's cracked. But I think obviously the pigment and the colour itself is super pretty. I think that warm orange, the warm orange matte in the crease, I think is actually a pretty decent shade. The quality is pretty good for that. So then I've got this sort of, again, warm sort of look. I used some of the pink shimmers in that. I did also put a bit of the glitter on like my liquid eyeliner instead, because I thought that might be a better way to use the glitter, because I wouldn't have to worry about it cracking if I was just using it over the top of liquid liner. I can definitely see in this picture that I'm looking at that this is when I discovered about how the Revolution pot concealer was separating eyeshadow when I used it as a cut crease. I'll put the image of that where you can really see it. I don't think that was anything to do with the eyeshadow. I think that was a concealer thing, and it kind of ruined my eyeshadow, and I'm happy about that. Damn you, Revolution concealer. If it wasn't for that, I think that would have been a nice eyeshadow look. I think the shimmers performed well. I tried to do a pretty just like basic glam look with it, and yeah, that looks pretty good. I like the Goldie Pale shimmer shade over like the majority of the lid. That's really nice. As I said, that warm orange shade works really well. This warm orange matte here, this is like the only matte in the palette, which is really irritating. And this white shimmer are really good quality. Then I tried to do something a bit smoky. I put some of the grey shimmers. I think I used this like dark greeny shimmer shade as well over the lid, and I tried to do something a bit kind of darker, smokier. Again, I used some glitter on the liquid liner. It's a bit of a basic look, but I think it turned out pretty decent. I think that's all of the looks I got with it. Again, it's like limited with what you can do with it. I feel like you'd probably want to use this in conjunction with something else. I do find it a bit annoying that there's only one matte in it. I personally like it when there's a more even balance of mattes and shimmers. Obviously, as I've discovered recently, I'm not really into glitters. Less glitters would have been nice, but I think the shimmers in this are actually pretty good quality. I do feel like the baked ones aren't the most pigmented, like stunning shimmers. Like they work, they're good, but they're nothing like special. I feel like the straight up like shimmery shimmers, like this red and this pink for example, do perform pretty well, and they're very pigmented. And obviously the whitey gold one. I feel like the shimmers in this are pretty good, but again, I feel like the baked ones, they're good, but they're nothing like, they don't do anything magical to your eyes, I'll just say that. But the shimmers in this are actually really good quality. Yeah, I wouldn't say rush out and get this, because it's limited with what you can do with it really. So lipsticks, I got 3 lipsticks. The Pop Beauty, I think they're called like matte sticks, I don't know because it's not written on the packaging, but the shade is Novel Nude. I got one of the Revolution. I think, again, it's not written on packaging. Why don't they write the names of these lipsticks on the packaging? But I think they're called the New Neutral Satin Lipsticks. This is in the shade Latte. And then I've got another Pro NAF product. This is, again, I think it's just called like Pro NAF, like satin lipstick, I think is what it's called. All of these products will be linked below anyway. This is in the shade Biscuit. I do really like the geometric packaging of this. Talk about the New Neutral one, just because that's the one that I've got on my lips today. I did also put a little bit of concealer over the top of it. I'm pretty sure these are the same as the other New Neutral lipsticks that are from Revolution, because I already have 2 of those. The only difference is this has got rose gold packaging and that one's just got like gold packaging, but the formula feels exactly the same. These are very like velvety matte lipsticks, which I'm personally very much into a velvety matte lipstick. I'm all about that life, and I think it's good quality if that's what you're into. I've not really got much to complain about. The shade is like a brownie shade. I would say it's a little bit deeper than a standard nude, but obviously it's going to depend on what your skin tone is. I think I would prefer the shade to be a tiny bit lighter. Other than that, I still do like the colour, it's nice. If you're into like a velvety matte bullet lipstick, this is absolutely perfect, and it's super affordable and cheap, so definitely would recommend it if that's what you're into. I personally really like it. So the Pro Nuff one, I wasn't sure if this was going to be matte or not, but it definitely is a matte lipstick, quite similar to the Neutral one. Again, I'm not obsessed with the shade because it is a little bit deeper than what I normally go for. It was a little bit more nude, but again, it's obviously going to depend on what your skin tone is. I do really like the formula of this. I think it's a really good lipstick. Just wish the shade was like a tiny bit paler, that's my only issue. And then we've got the Pop Beauty one. I feel like I've used this the most just because I feel like I like the colour the most, because this one is definitely the like palest and the most nude, but I do feel like the formula of the other two is better. This one I feel like it's a bit sheerer. It's not super shiny or anything, and it is definitely more of a matte lipstick than it is a shiny lipstick, but I just feel like the other ones are a bit more matte than this. I do quite like this, but I do feel like it's the sort of thing where if you've got like if you've got some like dryness or flakiness on your lips, I do feel like it sometimes kind of emphasizes it a bit. I don't think this is the most high quality lipstick, but I do like the shade of it and I have used it a lot. But I do feel like there are better formulas out there. That's the thing, I think the formula of these are better, but then I like the shade of this better, hence why I've kind of reached for it a bit more. Then lastly, we've got setting spray. So I brought one, it's the Revolution Glass Glow Ultimate Glow Dewy Thickening Spray, and I've used it an awful lot. I kind of just use it almost every time I do my makeup. I can see that it's I've got about a third of it left. That's like a very medical smell. Like it smells like, I don't know, like rubber gloves or something. Like it just smells like something you would smell if you were in a hospital or if you were at a dentist or something. Which is quite peculiar. Like I don't dislike it, but it's just weird. It's not something that you would expect from a setting spray. I like this. It's the sort of thing where I'd rather put it on than not put it on, but I don't feel like it does anything magical to your skin. I'm just like waiting on a setting spray that's just gonna like kind of transform my face. I think it does add a bit of dewiness. I do feel like it makes your skin look a little bit less dry. It does things, but I just don't feel like it does it enough, if you get what I mean. I feel like it could do it a bit more. Okay, so I think that is everything. Hopefully I've gone into enough detail about all those products. Definitely a very mixed bag, a lot of varying different opinions on things here. Some good, some bad, some in between. So my next makeup review, so I didn't buy any makeup in April, and for the most part, I didn't buy any makeup in May. I did buy like a full face of the brand, I think it's pronounced Fiera. I'll put how it's spelled on the screen, I never know. I've not got all of the products yet, and it's like right at the end of May now, so those will count as June products. So my next review will probably be a June, July updated makeup review, and that will probably come out like probably in September. Maybe some of that was interesting, maybe it wasn't, but I enjoy making these videos regardless. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.